And everyone, thanks for making it out in this rainy weather to our presentation tonight. Tonight we will be talking about the beast of Revelation 13, the two beasts, the beast of the sea and the beast coming up out of the land. You will notice tonight that in my presentation last week, we concluded with the dragon's determination to engage in the final battle against the remaining ones of the woman's offspring. Those are the remnant. And so the dragon was wrought with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. Those remnants are the ones who keep the commandment of God and have the testimony of Jesus. So those are the ones who obey God's commandment. And so the beast stood on the sand, the dragon stood on the sands of the seashore, on the sands of the seashore. John said, I saw a beast coming out, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And upon his horns were 10 crowns. Of this word blasphemy. And he said, I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blaspheming. And this beast that came up, John says that the dragon gave him power. And in the description of the beast, John says that the beast that he saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth was like what? Like that of a lion. And he went on further to describe the beast by saying, it was given to him to make what? War with who? With the saints of God. Those who what? Overcome. Okay? And so John in his description said that this beast that came up, the dragon gave him power so that he could overcome. And it's interesting to know that the ones who he makes war against are the ones that what? He's waging war against those that keep the commandments of God. And what this suggests to me is that it's a battle for the mind. It's a war against the mind. He's making a prisoner of those that obey God's law. So we find here that it's a war against the mind. If we look at the next slides, it will tell us that the 7 heads of the dragon represent the kingdoms through which Satan has worked to oppress God's people through the different time periods, down through the ages. So the dragon has always been at work, and now that the beast has come on the scene, the dragon now gives power to the beast. The first beast that John saw coming up out of the sea, it stood as the dragon stood on the shore, he saw that beast coming out of the sea with 10 heads, 7 heads, and what? 10 horns. With 10 crowns on its horn, and each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear, and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power, his throne, and his great authority. So here we find the dragon representing Satan give to this beast great power and authority. Now, if you look, that's a picture of the beast with his crowns, with the 10 crowns on his head. Notice that it mentioned that this beast comes up out of the sea, was a monstrous beast. What is suggesting here is that it's coming out from the sea, symbolized a disturbed and stormy social and political condition out of which tyrannies commonly arise. So the beast has its 10 horns, which are the royal diadem of what? Political authority. And the beast was slain. It says the word slain here suggests that the mortal womb of the beast head was like that of a slain lamb. So one of the head on the beast, it was slain. Okay, if we move on to the next slide, it says, this power claims what? Prerogative of God and equality with God. So this beast that John saw, it is claiming that it is what? Equal to who? To God. And this strongly indicates that while this satanic ally is a political power, it is also a what? A religious power working in opposition to God and to what? To God's people. So here we find that it's not just a political power, but this beast is a religious power. And all that dwell upon the earth did what? They worship this beast. They worship him. Who are the ones who worship the beast? Those whose name are not written where? In the Lamb's book of life, slain from where? The foundation of the world. Next. The final conflict will draw a defining line between those true worshipers of God and those who worship the beast. Those who have their names written within the Lamb's book of life, those are the ones that the beast will make war against. Okay, the beast, the sea beast is described as having a oneness with the dragon, which suggests to me that just as Christ and God, the Father and Son, so the dragon and the beast, they are what? They are one. They are one. The 7 crowns on the dragon heads donate that Satan false claim to full authority and power over the world. And so those who worship the beast, whose name were not written in the book of life, were slain from the foundation of the world. So the power claims prerogative of God and equality with God. So while this satanic ally is a political power, it is also working in opposition to God. And John also provides another identification regards to the sea monster. He says, who is like the beast and who is able to wage war with him? And it's a similar question that was asked of Christ. Who is able to what? Who is able to open the book? And so Satan here is saying, no one. So John now defines the beast's activities and character. He says, the beast is given a mouth to speak great authority, great things, blasphemous things. He said he shall speak against the Most High and oppress the saints. For time and half a time, representing what? 1,200 and how many? 1,260 days. Now, if you notice carefully that Christ also spent 1,260 days in his ministry when he was on earth. 3.5 years. So what Jesus did during his 3.5 years of faithful witnessing, Jesus said, if they persecute you, if they persecute me, they will also persecute you. And so the church was persecuted during the medieval period of the 3.5 years. And so the beast was allowed to make war with the saints and also to overcome. Not just to make war, but he was also allowed to overcome. So during this 42 months, God's people, although oppressed, persecuted, and small in number as compared with the wicked, they hold fast to God's word and bear witness to Christ. The beast is also given authority over tribe and people and tongue and nation. And so this giving of authority to the beast is a repetition in Revelation 13:2, where the dragon also delegated his power and his throne and his great authority to the beast. We'll notice that the phrase every tribe and people and tongue and nation indicates the same territory to which the end-time gospel will be preached. In Revelation 14, verse 6, it tells you that the angel fly having the everlasting gospel to preach to every nation. So the sea beast does offer a rival gospel to that of the three angels of Revelation 14. So after having identified the first of Satan's allies, John turned his attention to the time of the end. And all those who dwell on the earth whose names are not written in the book of life will have to worship the beast. And so as the final conflict will draw a defining line between the true worshippers of God and worshippers of Satan. And it says, if any man have an ear, what? Let him hear. That's Revelation 13, verse 9 says, if any man have an ear, let him hear. And so the only hope that God's people have in the final conflict is in the blood of Christ and the salvation that is secured by his death. That's the only hope we have, is in the work that Christ did for us. Behold, what manner of love, no greater love that any man have than Christ to shed his blood for his people. And so God's people are not urged to resist, but rather are called to what? To endure. Those that endure to the end, they shall be what? They shall be saved. So the last word with God is with God. And God will bring judgment and retribution on the oppressors of his people. And one thing we know for sure is that their punishment will be proportionate to the harm and the oppression that they brought upon God's faithful people. But until then, God's people must have endurance and faith. Must have endurance and faith. So the beast is described as one with the dragon, just as Jesus is one with the Father. As Christ received authority of the Father, so the beast also received authority from who? From the dragon. You see, both Christ and the sea beast received mortal wound and subsequently came back to life and rise to greater authority. So we see where Christ, he was crucified. We find where this sea beast, one of his head was what? Wounded. And both Christ and the beast exercised global authority over every tribe, people, tongue, and nation. This identifies the first of Satan's allies of Revelation 13 as an apostate religious system which counterfeits Christ's ministry on the earth. The fact that this religious system is presented in the symbol of a beast suggests that its political authority and power is under the guise of religion. So it thus provides the clue of the identification of the sea beast exclusively as the end-time religious political system. The angel further states that 5 of those empires, Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, and Greece, ruled the world before the time of John. And so if we careful study reveals that the only political power that matches the description of the sea beast and its activity in Revelation 13 during the medieval period was the papal ecclesiastical authority that ruled. And having established itself as an institutional power in the 6th century, he dominated the Western world in the name of heaven for more than 12 centuries. And so John now turns his attention to the second of Satan's allies, the beast of the earth. He says, as in portrayal of the first beast, John gives the general characteristic of the earth's beast. He said, behold, another beast coming up out of what? The earth. And he had what? 2 horns like what? A lamb. And he what? He spoke like a dragon. So John is now describing the lamb-like beast. And he says that he performed great signs. Great signs. That he even made fire to come down from where? From heaven to earth before the people. And he deceived those living on earth by means of signs which were given to him to do before the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast, who was wounded and came back to life. And so John went on to say that in Revelation 13 verse 18, he says, here is wisdom, let the one who has understanding count the number of the beast, for it is a number of a man. And his number is what? 666. So in Revelation 13, the earth is related to the earth of Revelation 12, 15, and 16, with reference to the dragon pursuit of the woman in the wilderness. When the earth helped the woman by opening its mouth and swallowing the flood-like river proceeding from the dragon mouth, the earth thus first rescued the woman. So the association of the earth and the sea in Revelation 13 suggests that together they signify the universal and worldwide scope of Satan's end-time activities as the fulfillment of the statement from Revelation 12:12 when it says, woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has now come down to you, having great wrath, knowing that he has a short time. So this suggests a symbolic meaning of the placing of the mark of the beast on the foreheads as the identifying mark of belonging to the satanic trinity. The seal of God, however, on the foreheads of God's people and the mark on the worshippers of the satanic trinity denotes the distinction between 2 groups at the end time. One group that worship God and keep his commandments, and the other group that obeys the beast. But what does the mark of the beast symbolize? It's the ultimate application of the mark of the beast is set for the time of the end, just prior to the second coming of Christ. It is in the final crisis that the mark of the beast will become a sign of allegiance for those who worship the satanic trinity, in contrast to those who worship God and obey him in keeping of his commandments. So the mark of the beast in Revelation stands in sharp contrast to the seal of God. The basic function, therefore, of the seal and the mark is ownership. Ownership, identity, and protection. And so both are thus signs of loyalty to God or the beast. Revelation 12-14 emphasizes that in the final crisis, the commandments of God will emerge as the standard of loyalty and obedience for God's people. The end time saints, having the divine seal, are characterized as those who keep the commandments of God. And so the mark of the beast thus seems to be the substitution of obedience to the beast for obedience to God. It appears that the first 4 commandments in particular are very important, which includes to remember the Sabbath day, which is a seal of God's authority on planet Earth. In 6 days, God what? Made heaven and earth, the sea and all fountains of water, but he rested on the what? 7th day. Okay? So here we find that the 2 groups at the time of the end are identified as those who worship God versus those who worship who? The dragon and the beast. And so this explains why the beast end-time activities are described as well-planned attacks on the 4th commandment. The beast demand what? Worship. Something that is reserved to who? To God. The Bible says in the verse 4 that you shall have no other God before me. It talks about raising up of image, talking about the violation of the 2nd commandment and the blasphemy attack on the 3rd commandment. So the Sabbath was thus the seal of the ratification of the Sinaitic covenant between God and Israel. And the Sabbath was an external sign of belonging to the true God and special relationship between God and his covenant people. So when in Revelation 14:6-12, John described God's final appeal to the inhabitants of the earth, he does so in terms of calling them to worship the true and living God, the Creator God, in the context of what? The 4th commandment. So this appeal to worship the Creator God is followed by the proclamation of the 2 other angels who announced the fall of Babylon and warns against worshiping the beast and receiving the mark on the right hand or on the forehead. So the urging of people to worship the true God in relation to the Sabbath commandment and warning them not to worship the beast and receive his mark strongly suggests, therefore, that the mark of the beast function as the counterfeit to the Sabbath commandment. That the receiving of the mark has something to do with the commandments of God is further confirmation that the worshippers of God are characterized as one who keep his commandment and have the testimony or the faith of Jesus. So the receiving of the mark of the beast will thus stand in direct opposition to obedience to God's commandments. And only through divine imparted wisdom will the faithful be able to comprehend and discern the true meaning of the satanic number 666, the true character of the beast. So God is calling his people back to what? True worship. True worship. He wants us to worship him who is the creator God, the one who made heaven, who made earth, who made the sea and the fountains of water. And so the readers are called in Revelation 13 to worship the true God. And it demonstrates that man persistently will seek after evil. And the beast of Revelation 13 represents man exercising his sovereignty apart from God. Man conformed to the image of the beast rather than to the image of God. And so man apart from God become demonic. In such a context, the number 666 functions as a symbol of the great imperfection. And so it is in this sense that the true meaning of the number of the beast is to be found, meaning that it is possible to perceive only through divine discernment. This suggests that in the text, a contrast is intended between the beast's name and the Lord's name. This is true also of the beast's number, since it's synonymous with his name. However, the beast falls short of the divine character that he is counterfeiting. And so Satan as identification of this Antichrist power requires the wisdom of divine discernment more than intellectual cleverness and human calculation. The dragon, Satan himself, is still standing on the seashore. It appears that no single religious or political entity in modern history matches the description of the earth beast as does the United States. The United States, therefore, emerged on the historical arena after the medieval ecclesiastical system had received its mortal wound. This nation has become a major dominant power in the world. As the leading democratic world power, it has been admired for its political and religious tolerance and freedom. Yet as a military and financial power it is being highly respected and by some even feared. And so today the United States exercises a major role in world affairs. So far, this power clearly resembles the two-horned beast. Speaking in historical terms, what will make this two-horned lamb begin to speak like the dragon is yet to be seen. Revelation 13, however, seems to foretell a key religious political role for the United States in the final crisis. In verses 12 to 14 show that in exalting the sea beast in the last days, the activities of the earth beast will initially be characterized by great and miraculous sign as a means of persuasion. So let us just frankly acknowledge that the full understanding of the fulfillment of this prophecy of the land monster still awaits us. But further in the vision, it indicates a stage of action which embraced the whole world. How the entire masses of humanity will be drawn into the vortex of deception is not apparent at present. The reason for such an understanding is that in Revelation 13, everything is to be fulfilled on a worldwide scale, and nothing is localized or nationalized to any single area or nation. Final deceptive activities of the great controversy will heavily involve the United States, and it will be worldwide. And so in Revelation, the saints standing on the threshold of the great tribulation are sealed upon their foreheads. And this set them apart as God's people. And it protects God's people from the defeat of the enemy and also from the judgment of God. So the reception of the mark of the beast and the seal of God, consisting of the names of the beast and of God, denotes conformity to the character of Satan or of God. You are going to conform either to Satan or to God. Obedience to God or obedience to the beast. And so in the final crisis, which is centered around worship, the people that are living at the time of the end will fall into one of two groups. The worshippers of the true God having the seal on their forehead, or the worshippers of the satanic trinity having the mark on their right hand or in their foreheads. And it is thus the seal and the mark received that distinguish the two groups of worshippers, respectively, in the final crisis. The sealed worshippers of the true God in Revelation 12 to 14 are further characterized as those who keep the commandments of God. Those who have the mark of the beast contrast with those who keep the commandments of God. And it seems that the mark of the beast has to do with the violation of the commandments of God. And so while the seal of God has to do with keeping the keeping of them, this suggests clear that the final crisis, the commandment of God, will emerge as a standard of loyalty to God. And so as we move closer to the end of time, we will realize that laws will be passed to enforce that the Sabbath be done away with, God's seal or sign be done away with. But if we remain faithful and loyal to God to the end, we will be protected by the destroying angels when they have come to destroy the earth. And so at the judgment of the harlot, those merchants mourn because they are not able to do business with Babylon anymore. The merchants are further described in the text as the great men of the earth, deceived by Babylon's magic spell. We have already pointed out the relationship between Revelation 13 Revelation 18 are the figurative commercial salesperson of Babylon who sell and distribute the spiritual merchandise of her corrupt doctrine and politics. So we realize that in the end, this great country is going to play a great role in the final crisis leading up to Christ's second coming. And so what we discover is that the war that is raging is a battle for the mind. A battle for the mind. The evil intelligence that make war on the saints of God are real people and are very much involved in real struggles. And we have to choose either our loyalty to God and the Lamb or to the beast and his image. So beginning with Revelation 12:17, John the Revelator makes every effort to warn readers of the book about Satan's firm determination to win the final battle. And so a careful analyst of the text suggests that the final crisis will definitely be a battle for the mind. The followers of the Lamb all have the name of God upon their foreheads, whereas the followers of the beast have the mark on the forehead indicating belief or allegiance, or on the hand only indicating forced obedience without mental assessment. And so God wants us to obey his word, to choose carefully to follow him or to follow Satan. Follow God's commandment, keeping people, or follow the beast. There's only two choices: for Christ's commandment keeping people, or the dragon that deceived the elect. It is my prayer this evening that we will choose to obey God's commandment, so that the blood that was shed on Calvary will be able to cover us during the final crisis of this earth's history.